Hello there, and welcome to a really important, cataclysmically exciting edition of Breakfast All Day. It might be the last episode ever, or is it?
We're calling this Breakfast All Day Endgame.
Yes.
We're already announcing Phase 5, however.
Yes, last breakfast ever. Christy and...
Alonso.
And Matt.
We're all here. Hello. And it is, of course, a huge week because Avengers Endgame is out. We will do for you guys primarily a spoiler-free review. We will then secondarily go into full-on spoilers, so you've all been warned now. Yeah. We have some other films for you. It's kind of an eclectic week. And then later on the Patreon, if you guys want to come join us there, Matt and I will do the next episode of Game of Thrones.
And we're all going to do Fosse Verdon.
We're all going to do Fosse Verdon. Mm-hmm. We've got some trailers for you, so it's kind of a jammed week. Does this mean that summer has now begun, or did it begin when Captain Marvel came out a few weeks ago?
We are in the endless summer now, thanks to Marvel, basically. I mean, Shazam even, I remember saying, like, this is a summer movie that's opening in March. Yes. So, yeah, I think it's just always summer now because summer wasn't big enough to incorporate all the summer-type movies that we have to get every year.
Right. So, I guess except for January and February, which truly still is crap, summer is year-round now when it comes to big blockbuster-type stuff.
I would say this is the beginning of summer. This is officially the first, and I think this is the first big blockbuster that really is positioning itself in April. A few years ago, I think it was Iron Man 2, there was a brief point that it was set. One of the Iron Man movies was going to release in the same weekend, the same final weekend of April, and they flinched.
And put it in early May.
In early May, because it was, I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, that's interesting. Somebody's putting a summer blockbuster in April. They finally crossed that Rubicon.
But I guess now we can say the gauntlet has been thrown.
Exactly. So.
Okay, so we are right here with you.
You get to make those jokes.
Yes.
No one else.
Exactly.
I see how it is.
We are with you here in the present. We are not time traveling at any point in time. We are confused completely. But Matt, please explain to us all 3 hours and 2 minutes of Avengers Endgame.
All right, so Endgame picks up about 3 weeks after the events of.
No, it's during the snap.
Well,
it begins in the snap.
Okay, so
this is the spoiler-free review. I don't even know what we want to get into.
So we pretty much start about 3 weeks afterwards, and I will only touch on things we've seen in the trailer. We've seen Tony Stark trapped on a spaceship. Leaving a message. He may not have that much longer. We see the remaining Avengers who are on Earth trying to figure out what they're going to do. Captain Marvel shows up and comes to Earth. Carol Danvers hooks up with the team. Or joins the team, not hooks up with the team, joins the team, and they come up with a plan that may or may not work, and then things ensue, and you get 3 hours of stuff. I'm really mixed on this movie.
Okay, which is surprising to me. I figured you would love it.
So I love it. The stuff that I love, there's some great emotional beats in it. There's some really, really good emotional beats. Especially early on, there's a great discussion, kind of a great argument between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, kind of in the aftermath. And that is in line with the kind of drama of that relationship that I think paid off best in Civil War.
They're inherently conflicting approaches to things, right?
And the friendship that has really fractured and as the blame gets passed around, that I was really, really fascinated with. I thought that was really, really good work from the writers and from everybody working on the film. But then you don't get that much more of that type of thing, and it really.
I was hoping they were going to do Your Fault from Into the Woods.
Like it. You get so. I felt like it's a reminder of what, especially the Russo brothers, are capable of, the drama and the character work they've brought to these characters that we know so well. And then it kind of gets abandoned, and that really bothered me. Like there's interesting stuff with Tony and whether or not he wants to go and really come up with the plan to really change things and really kind of fix things. And they don't really, they hint at where the conflict's going to be and then never explore it. And that was really frustrating. And then the other thing is, and we'll get into our spoiler review. They set up a bunch of rules about what they can and can't do, and then gleefully break them the rest of the movie, and that was infuriating.
Well, they have to improvise.
I know, and it was really, really irritating because then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Now, that being said, there's a lot of really great, what saves this movie and keeps it from being a disaster is that there is some stuff that, some of it's fan service, some of it isn't, but there's moments that are really fun. There's moments that I was cheering, and there's moments that are very emotional, especially towards the end. Like there's something that happens, and again, I'm only going to hint at it. I'm not going to say, but there's something that happens in the big battle scene that is a payoff and kind of a callback to something that we saw ages ago, 4 or 5 movies ago. And when it happens, it's so satisfying and it's so awesome, and they play it so well. And then, I'm not going to really, at the risk of being spoilery, I'll say the word send-off. There's send-offs for certain characters that are great, right? But as a wrap-up, as like a season finale.
It's a season finale.
As a season finale.
My rap review.
Right. As a season finale, it's fine. As a movie with a story, and it's really frustrating. And again, there's such examples in this series of great character work, and it leaves so much out that I feel like there's a lot of holes in it, and that bothered me. I mean, it's still worth seeing. Look, if you're watching this,
right,
you're probably going to see.
If you're there's no way anyone's on the fence about this. Absolutely not. Right? Like, they really just kind of want to hear, what I'll say to people watching, who haven't seen it yet. If if you're wondering if you're going to be happy, you probably are. If you're thinking about this, you're going to be happy about it.
And certainly, there have been ones recently where, say, Black Panther or Captain Marvel, you could say, you don't have to have seen all the other movies. This is very self-contained, blah blah blah. You have to have seen the other movies for this one.
That's the exact thing I was just going to say. Actually,
you better come loaded for lore here,
because it drops you in. You have to know why the opening moments matter. You have to know, why.
And throughout, you have to have been
the character relationships,
what's being talked about, and where they're going.
Right, and you have to.
It's kind of like me watching Game of Thrones without having seen a second of it.
Yeah,
it's like that.
It's not like that. Look, there's no way to come into this without having seen at least 5 or 6 of these of key movies here,
sure,
right? And if you haven't seen 5 or 6 of them, at least 5 or 6 of them, you have to have seen Civil War, you have to have seen, obviously,
Avengers, Guardians.
You have to have seen Guardians 2, especially. You have to have seen Ant-Man and Wasp. But there's a bunch of stuff that it's dependent upon. You have to have seen Doctor Strange, right? And you have to have seen Doctor Strange, right? If you haven't seen any of those, or you're missing one of those, you'll be like, well, what's going on? Now, again, if you haven't seen any of those, why are you here?
Here's what I was reminded of while watching this movie. Why I watch Hallmark Christmas movies.
Only Alonso will bring it back to the Alonso.
Here is why. I think there are movies out there that challenge you, that make you think about things, that make you reconsider, what you think you know about art or about culture or society or politics or whatever else. And then there are movies that just give you the thing that you walked into the theater to see. When you go to an Esther Williams musical, you want to see her dive into a pool and come out with 10,000 mermaids with sparklers.
Right.
When you watch a Hallmark Christmas movie, you want to see a tree lighting and caroling and cookie decorating and, all that snow, fake or real. And you go into this movie because you want the thing that it's going to give you.
Right. Alonso, you wrote in your review, and I really liked what you wrote about how this functions like the big Marvel events, right? The big cross-title.
The annual issue,
The big cross-title comic book events where you get that 2-page splash of everybody doing something, right?
Yeah.
And there's a few of those pages in this. What does start to be fun in the movie is a little bit of can you spot the shots, can you spot the scenes where everyone's actually together versus people being digitally inserted?
There's a moment toward the end where you get these clusters of people, and it's so like, okay, so that was shot on one day, and that was shot on one day. And that was,
it's awkward, But you mentioned fan service, and this kind of is like fan service, the movie, for better and for worse.
Mostly for better, I would say.
I mean, so the way they showed it to us, just for you guys watching at home, is that they had 4 different screenings on the Disney lot staggered throughout the course of the day, and they were all packed, of course. People were cheering, people were sobbing. I mean, again, if you're there, you're steeped in it, you're invested emotionally in it, you're ready. But it really gave the people what they wanted in ways that are exciting, in ways that are fun, in ways that are surprisingly emotional. Like, I didn't cry.
I didn't cry.
I got a little at moments, but not because of a death though, but because of a reunion.
Okay. But it does what it's.
This is the opposite of Michael Haneke's Funny Games. Like, Funny Games is a movie that exists to provoke you and make you feel bad for having wanted to see the film in the first place. And this is a movie that's like, come right in. You have walked into a Shakey's. Let us give you all the pizza you want.
You know, it's tough though. For the Russos had a lot to juggle, and they had a lot of people to juggle. You know, we all heard it was going to be 3 hours long, and it was like, when do I go to the bathroom? And people were really worried about that. I would argue it does not feel like 3 hours. There is so much going on all the time, and it moves really well that for the most part it does not drag.
There are a few moments like in the middle where like people have split up into groups, and this group does a thing, and this group does a thing, and you get to like the third or fourth, and you're like, ugh.
Right. It's pretty much, it's a mad
kind of,
It is.
But nonetheless, those were fleeting moments. For the most part, I had a wonderful time, and it gave me what I wanted on an emotional level, on a superhero, on a comics fan level, on just somebody who has been reasonably invested in this series. Like, as franchises go, I'm into this one. I have fun with this one. I grew up reading the Avengers specifically, and so I feel like I got what I came in for.
I would say it's less actiony actually than a lot of the Marvel movies and than a lot of the big Avengers ensemble movies. It really is more about the characters working through and tying up all of their relationships and their resentments and their regrets. And in that regard, it allows this really strong cast to really, really act a lot of the time. And I responded more to that because usually with these giant movies where it's, big groups of people fighting big groups of people, I just sort of zone out and I can't tell who's doing what to whom. And there is some of that. There certainly is some of that. But it is smart to rely on the emotional entanglements and letting these people really connect with each other on a pure emotional level.
I think that
worked for me.
I think there's some of that. I think they, especially if you look at the original team, I think you get about 60% of that coverage. But I think a lot more gets left out, and it was really irksome to me.
That people didn't do things and say things you wanted them to do and say?
No, it's more just like you get real, like, grounded humanity and character work from maybe 2/3 of the Avengers.
True.
And the rest of it, it's just like, oh, well, here's what we have to do on this fetch quest, right? and then the other, and stuff that, again, like, if anything, this is really, the last chapter of the story of the friendship between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. Right, and what we get, and kind of the end game for those characters. You get, not quite the same level of arc with Thor, and I don't think anyone else gets that same level of arc, right?
But there's
or even, and some of them, I think aren't even close. Like,
well, again, I think because that's what makes it a season finale. There's certain characters that we are bidding farewell to. There's other characters that we're merely rearranging and putting in a new place so that when we pick up the story again, we know where they are and how they got.
I would say that even Rocket gets surprisingly pure substantive moments than we ordinarily get from Rocket, because he's usually your comic relief, and he's inappropriate, and we can rely on him for that. But there's more shading
Yeah,
to him even.
We'll get
but,
into
this is some of like Chris Evans' best work of his life, I would say. Very powerful stuff. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. we always knew had this in him. Chris Evans has gotten closer and closer to this level with every film, and he's just great in this.
I would also say that the big third act battle is a lot more satisfying than ones have been in other superhero movies. Like,
agreed.
You think about a lot of these Marvel movies, even like Wonder Woman, where that movie falls apart as like the big CG battle at the end, where it's like, oh, this again. This one at least felt like they found little moments within it to establish character things, to have little things that mattered, so it wasn't just blah 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 blah.
Right, and that felt, despite the enormity of it, it felt kind of restrained. I mean, it felt like it wasn't overlong. Like it's efficient. It does what it does, what it has to do to get all those moments in for you.
Out, you're right.
And yet there's also like bam, bam, bam going on.
Yeah, I guess my complaints are like there's not enough.
Enough what?
Enough
everything.
You wanted a 4-hour cut.
Yeah, actually, like I would have happily had another 20, 30 minutes with a couple of key characters getting the same level of treatment that Steve and Tony get.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and I agree. But I think given what they had to cover before they crossed the finish line, this is as good as they could do.
Black Widow gets that. Hawkeye gets that.
We'll get into it in our spoiler review.
We will. Yeah. Others get that. I would argue even Hulk gets some of that.
Okay.
But it's always been Iron Man and Captain America. Right. Anyway, we all liked it to varying degrees. Matt, what is your sad low number?
6.
What is yours, Alonso?
I said 7.5. I'm
saying 7.6. It's really fun, and Nick really dug it, and he loved it. So, and he's seen them all. So if you're gonna bring kids, kids will love it. Our number is a 7. It's at 96% on the tomato meter. So I hope you have enjoyed our spoiler-free review. If you want spoilers, click on that one.
Exactly.
And enjoy your 4 a.m. screening if you haven't already bought tickets.
Or if you're listening to this on the podcast, zap through the next several minutes.
If you're watching this on YouTube, though, like this video and subscribe at our channel. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BeFastAllDay. And hey, why don't you support our Patreon at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay, where we've got TV recaps of Game of Thrones and Fosse Verdon, as well as trailer recaps or analyses and news and whatever kind of stuff you want to see. So check that out. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, bye.